Hi, my name is Benjamin Groff, and this video is about writing better verses. You see, I always hear people talk about writing huge choruses, but I never hear people getting excited about writing the best verses of their lives. And actually this is a free video from my digital course called Insider Secrets to Hit Songwriting. And if you click the link below in the description field, you can learn more all about it. It's basically 5 hours and 25 video modules, and this is all my best insider secrets to hit songwriting that I've learned over the 25 years of being a music publisher and working with hundreds of hit songwriters. I mean, literally, I think I'm giving away all the knowledge I have on what makes hit songs really tick, what sends some songs to the top of the charts and other songs just to the bottom of the playlist. So hope you enjoy this video. And if you make it all the way to the very end, I have a special discount code for you as well for the course. But in the meantime, enjoy the video. Thanks. So, writing better verses. Your verses don't just exist to get us to the chorus. I mean, they do, but they don't. And today I hear a lot of people talking about writing big, fat, juicy hit choruses, but I don't hear anyone talk about writing big, fat, juicy verses. Where are those juicy, fat verses? I don't hear them. And I think that it's easy to get lazy about writing a verse that kind of gets you to the chorus and does the job of a verse. But I tell you, so many songs come in or that I hear that are being released, and I could probably maybe sing back the chorus to you, but I certainly could not sing back the verses. And why is that? I think it's a lot of things. I think it's some of it, well, as I'm going to get into, is just a mentality and mindset of, like really amping up the hit factor of your verses. But there's also a game of contrast here, and I'm going to explore that with you as well. But let's get started here with the chorus. So, your verse is like a great appetizer or more. And I'm going to use a food analogy throughout this presentation because I think it's a really good one. So you've gone to a great restaurant before, right? And you've sat down, you looked at the courses, the main courses, and you're like, oh my gosh, these look so good. And then you look at the appetizers and you're like, you know what? I might prefer to have 4 appetizers versus this main course because the appetizers look so good. So in a way, there's an analogy here. Your verse is like a great appetizer. The appetizer provides you something to eat and to have a conversation with while they're preparing the main course. But appetizers just don't have to be like this interim meal as you wait for your main course. The appetizer could be just as good. So I think it's a proper analogy. The verse here is your juicy appetizer and your layup. And layup is like a sports analogy too, because if you're playing a game of basketball, your teammate can't slam dunk the ball unless they're being properly laid up for the dunk and serve that up. If you don't have that right serve up, it's gonna be really hard, if not impossible, to really slam dunk that basketball and get those points. And it's the same things with verse. If you have a verse that does its job great and sets up the chorus, I mean, you're going to be an animal. So, as I said, how many times do you hear people say, damn, what a verse? Never. And it's sad because so many of my favorite songs from previous decades have verses that are amazing. I mean, they are, you could never imagine, you could never separate or imagine that song existing without that verse. Yet today, I think verses has just become a transient, transitional, disposable artifact of a piece of songwriting. And let's think about getting away from that. At least if you want to write hits and perennial songs, that's what we need to do. So you can read this as I'm sure you have while I've been talking. So
Great verses are not just a fucking flimsy arugula appetizer with balsamic vinegar to get you to the main course. Pardon my French, but maybe we're in a French restaurant. The verse can be a main course unto itself, right? So, versus mindset. Let's start with mindset. Don't be a lazy butt. That's your first key songwriting idea of this post. Good enough is just not good enough. And I think that the mindset of good enough applies far too often to the verses. So can we get rid of this flimsy notion that your verses are good enough and just exist to get to the chorus? That's just a lazy songwriting approach. So you can quit your session early and play your Fortnite. When it comes to your chorus, would you also, when it comes to your chorus, would you also be that lazy about your chorus? Would you be like, yeah, that chorus is good enough? No, that's not how you write choruses. You tailor choruses and craft it until it's like a home run, slaps you in the face, and knocks your head off like Muhammad Ali. So why can't we do that with verses? Verses are not an afterthought. Although, as I mentioned, I kind of feel they are today. And at this point, I sometimes get some pushback. Someone will say, oh, yeah, but the #1 hit on the chart right now is these top 10 songs. They're not great verses. Come on, give me a break. I mean, do you want to compare yourself to a transient whatever #1 that maybe is going to be off the charts in 4 weeks? Or do you want to compare yourself and put the bar for you as a songwriter to be the very, comparing your songs to the very best? So stop your whining, because you're better than that. I hope so. Second, let's talk and get into the real meat. Notice the continual food analogies here. By the way, I hope I can finish this module before the sun goes down. And it'll be maybe by the end of this post, it'll be a really dramatic sunset. But let's talk about some other ways to light up your verse. So, part 1 is kind of a little bit of a rehash, but melodic rhythm. We talked about melodic rhythm in a previous module, but if you can laden your verse with melodic rhythm, remember, melodic rhythm is the God particle of hit songwriting. So if you can make your melodic rhythm so juicy and savory, and repetitive and lightning in a bottle, you're going to probably have a foundation for a great verse. So this is a recap that the melodic rhythm is the rhythm that the vocalist sings. And a great hook is a great rhythm first, in my opinion, and then the melody comes secondarily. So show me a great repetitive melodic rhythm, and I'll show you the foundation for a hit. On the other hand, if you show me an unorganized, random, and whatever melodic rhythm, I'll probably show you a whatever organized song that likely isn't a hit. I'm so sorry. So you can go back and look at that playlist that I shared earlier. It's also in the document, which has all the links, which is a separate PDF in this course. And there's a playlist in there too, right? So Lady Gaga, it's a pretty good example of a tasty melodic rhythms all throughout that song. Part 2, contrast. Now this is like the second half of this module, is we're going to be talking about contrast. Now, as you can see, prosodeically, this slide looks completely different than all the others. Now, I kind of was having some problems with the layout to begin with, but then I was like, you know what? Screw it, and I'm just going to talk about how this looks different than the rest of the slides. And that's perfectly correct, because this slide layout, it's different and it stands out from the rest as well. Now, this is such a beautiful slide, besides the fact I misspelled first, but there's not much we can do about it now, right? So give me a break. So part 2, contrast. As I'm used this example before, so I'm going to read this. I have really something important to say, and I'm not sure how to really tell you, and it's really something that's been feeling. I've been really nervous to say this, but the truth is I really love you. So that has no space. So, and I did a whole module on space and the importance of space and how people aren't using it and how you can use it. But first, let's talk about space. This is how contrast can work for you. If your chorus has a lot of vocal information, like very full vocals, like vocals kind of filling up the chorus and not a lot of space and rest, well, how about having lots of space in your vocal lines in your verse? Just use space as an instrument, especially if it's an emotional piece. Because when people are emotional or have something really hard or thoughtful they're trying to say, that's how they talk. I really want to tell you something. Did you know that? Well, it's about mom, and I found her making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and she's allergic to peanut butter. I don't know. I'm just feeling a little silly right now, but you know what I'm talking about. If that was your verse, then your chorus can have more vocal information and less space. Now, this is not. I'm giving you these tools. You don't have to use these tools all the time in every singular case, but these are ways that you can make your verses pop and consequently your chorus pop as well. So it's by contrasting and using these devices I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this module, you're going to be able to set your verses apart from your chorus and your chorus separate from your verse. And if you are a great writer, each of those are going to be even more memorable. So in the contrast game, a really good way to do that and contrast your sections is with space. So interval writing is another one I really like. Now you can use any of these techniques in any of your sections. I'm just saying that if you have your chorus done, you may want to look at what your verse is doing to make it different. So interval writing is, I would call, like vocal jumps. It's like one note's here. Like scalar writing is like one note's here, 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 or it's like linear. Interval writing is you've got a note here and a note up here. They're vocal jumps, and almost no one does this anymore. Interval writing is the opposite of scalar or riffing around a melodic area, which I find just probably is more of the case of verse writing today. You're kind of just riffing around this comfortable melodic area, and you come up with a melody, and it fits on the chords, and its purpose is to get to the chorus. And that's what I'm not into that at all. So interval writing is, a melody might start on a C, and the next note is a B flat, a minor seventh higher. So one of my favorite examples is from West Side Story. There's a song called Somewhere, and it's such an amazing song written by Elmer Bernstein. The lyric is, "There's a place for us," and between "there's" and there's it's a minor seventh, and it's so signature. It creates such a beautiful emotion as well. And there's plenty of other interval writing going on in that song. And I know what you're saying. Oh, maybe those are all old-timey kind of melodies. Well, to contrast that with a fun party rock anthem, we have LMFAO, and they wrote a chorus that goes, "Party rock is in the house tonight." Part of my lame singing, but you get what I'm saying, like interval writing. So again, if your chorus is kind of scalar and compact, maybe your verses can be have interval jumps, or vice versa. Your verses might be kind of scalar, and your chorus can have jumps in the vocal. Length of lines. So we used this song, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," in an earlier example using rhythm. So length of lines is another way we can differentiate and contrast sections and build better verses, and consequently build better choruses and make your choruses pop. So let's take a look at the verse. It's just 2 lines, very long lines. But then the chorus in Smells Like Teen Spirit is much more compact. So you have the verse has a very long line, it's repeated, and then the chorus has shorter phrases, short phrase, short phrase, short phrase, short phrase, short phrase. And by that contrast, they set each other apart. So you can check out that song "Smells Like Teen Spirit" and see what I'm saying. But if I were to perform that, it would be without getting sued for copyright infringement. It'd be like one. That's the rhythm of the verse that's then repeated. And then the chorus, as you know, goes like this. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's another way you can make your sections pop. So contour of your melody. So this is also something I don't hear a lot of people doing much anymore, and just basically melodic writing. For instance, a contour of a melody going up, a contour of a melody going down. Or maybe it looks like a tent. You have a melody in the verse that goes up and then comes back down. Or you just have linear, maybe like one note in the verse. Now, I know you're probably saying, one note in the verse? That sounds like a terrible melody. Well, actually, it could be if you only have one note in your pre-chorus and one note in your chorus. That would probably be kind of repetitive and linear. But if you contrast, if you put in the game of contrast here, it becomes something else. So Miss Jackson is still nasty, and so is her contrast game. In other words, maybe your verses just have one note. And as I mentioned, one note you say, oh, that's so boring. So if you check out and pull up a song called If by Janet Jackson, it's one of my favorite lesser known Janet Jackson songs. Check out the verse melody. It's one note with an amazing locked in melodic rhythm. Very exciting verse. But what happens in the pre-chorus? Oh, there's movement. The melody actually has a contour and moves and nice kind of chords. There's a real melody. So here we have the verse, one note, and then in the pre-chorus we have an actual melodic contour and actual harmony that supports that. So I think that's another great way to differentiate your sections and how to build better melodies. Actually, the title of this module could actually be called Writing Better Melodies, but I'm specifically focused on writing better verses and how you can think about accomplishing that. So here's another idea as far as writing better verses and making those verses pop. And it's what we would call front-loading and back-loading phrases. So if your measure one starts right here, you can front-load a phrase over here and let it spill in and come in on the one. That's one way you could build some phrases. Another way, imagine if your measure one is here, measure starts, and then the vocal information begins, the melody. Or, boom, right on the one. So your verses could have a front-loaded phrase, front-loaded phrase, front-loaded phrase, front-loaded phrase. Your pre could have backloaded phrases. So your pre starts on the one, space, and then vocal information. Starts, space, vocal information. And then maybe your chorus is boom, dead on, da, 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 dum. And especially in choruses, having that punchline on the one can sometimes really be a nice effect. So that's another way you can differentiate your sections and ultimately build and write better verses. So note values. And this is one of my favorites, and it's the same concept pretty much. So imagine if you wrote a song and you're using 16th notes in your verses, 16th notes in your pre-choruses, and also 16th notes in your chorus. Well, you're going to have a song that's going to sound really linear and very samey in all the sections. And the next bullet point here is, well, who would write a song like that? You'd be surprised how many songs that come in that use maybe like eighth notes and quarter notes for both the verse pre and the chorus, and they just kind of blend, the sections just blend into each other and they don't pop in a way. So like another analogy is, imagine you're a painter and you have three blank canvases and you paint them all completely red, each one, all red, red, red. And maybe one's a little bit off the shade, and maybe one is totally this red, and maybe this red is a little other type of red. They're a little bit different, but really someone looking at these would be like, well, there's 3 red paintings versus a red painting, a green painting, and a black painting. That very different. And that's what I feel too about thinking about your verses, your pre-chorus, and your chorus, this game of contrast. That's assuming if you have a pre-chorus, of course. But imagine writing the following type of song. You have a verse that's using 16th notes. Your pre-chorus is using quarter note triplets. Dot, 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 dot. Your chorus is using primarily long notes. Now you're going to have something that no matter what, just from the skeleton of rhythm, each section is going to be very different from the other. So here's your contrast cheat sheet. Space, interval writing, length of lines, contour of melody or one-note melodies. And actually that might be an interesting study for you to do, is maybe write a song where your verses are just one note and your chorus is very scalar. Or the opposite, front-loading and back-loading phrases. Actually, each one of these ideas here is a study unto itself, where you could sit down one day and say, you know, I'm going to focus on writing some songs from the perspective of space. I'm going to write a melody that has interval and vocal jumps, things like that. We talked about rhythmic note values, part 5, front-loading, back-loading phrases. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. 7, melodic ranges belonging to specific sections. We didn't talk about 7 yet, did we? But it's also one of my favorites. And by the way, I'm not sure if I bring this up in a slide, but before I go into the next slide, all these things here, they can also be your toolkit to get you out of jams. And when I say out of jams, I don't mean like, you know, the police pulled you over and they want to see your ID, but kind of like a jam means you're writing your song, or you're in a co-writing session, and you just can't seem to nail that verse or that pre-chorus, or it's just not popping. Well, get out your toolkit and pull one of these tools out and think, well, okay, what's my chorus doing? Oh, my chorus has a lot of vocal information. So maybe verse, let's try writing from the perspective of space. You can go through each one of these, and it's almost like a prompt, a creative prompt to have you think a little bit differently towards the writing, instead of just randomly trying things. And trust me, I know what randomly trying things is like. It's frustrating, and I think this could be a really good thing for you to explore. So let's go on here. So melodic range is belonging to a section of your song. So it's a similar idea here. If your melodic range is in the verse is C to G, and your pre-chorus also is a melodic range of C to G, and your chorus is a melodic range from C to G, you're going to have a boring song, probably. I like to think of it sometimes as sections of your song owning melodic range, like fences. Like, this is a section, fenced off section of melody here. Here's another section with a fenced in melodic area, and then here's another one. And we explained this and we talked about it on another module, but I'm bringing it up here. So in this example, now we're talking about contrast. What if your verses owned from C to G, and your pre-chorus owned from F to B flat, and your chorus owned from B to G. Now you've got a song that gradually ramps up its energy and hitting its climax of notes in the chorus, which usually is what happens. You have your exceptions, like "Can't Feel My Face" by The Weeknd is one where the verses or notes are actually higher than the chorus, and we'll talk about "Can't Feel My Face" in an upcoming slide here. So you see what I'm talking about? I mean, these are all ideas that hopefully, or maybe they've already been in your toolkit. Maybe you've been aware of them, but hopefully this is giving you a way to think a little bit different about how you're approaching songwriting. One other thing, I was sitting down with a writer not too long ago, and we're trying to figure out how to make her melodies pop way better, especially in the verses. And I realized that her co-writer isn't giving her a lot of opportunity to come up with interesting melodies, because the chords in the verses are kind of boring. They're not out of the ordinary, and they're kind of plain. So if you have, if you are eating vanilla ice cream and you put vanilla sprinkles on top of it, you're just going to have more vanilla. So having a foundation that's interesting is something that probably will inspire more interesting verses as well. So that's a thought too about just your harmony. Sometimes if you have interesting harmony, you're going to have an interesting verse melody. So one other thing I love to talk about is I'm a song junkie, if you haven't noticed. So I'm obsessed with songwriting. And one of my favorite things are just songs that are hook, hook, and hook. Like, it's not a verse, it's not a pre-chorus, it's not a chorus. It's hook A, hook B, hook C, and repeat all that stuff again. And that just makes me smile. And those are the songs that I'm singing in my car at obscenely wrong volumes. So let's go on to this next slide here. But this is something I heard about U2. I don't know if it's correct or if it's true or not, but I heard that U2, the way they would write their songs is they would come up and they write a great chorus, and they would refine and refine and refine, and they get that chorus as good as they could. And then Bono or The Edge or someone would say, okay, you know what? That's going to be our verse now. And they would have to top, that would be their slam dunk chorus just became their verse. And now they've got to top what they just wrote that they thought was a hit chorus. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think that's an interesting exercise. So I'm just going to mention 3 of my favorite songs to exemplify this that I feel are just like hook upon hook upon hook. And if you were to ask me which one is parts of those songs is the chorus, maybe one section more than the other, but just the hooks are just so laden hook galore. So check out, if you have a moment, Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me, Men Without Hats, Safety Dance, The Weeknd, Can't Feel My Face, and Duran Duran, The Reflex. The Reflex is probably one of my favorite pop songs of all time. So these songs, it's almost, and this is an interesting exercise too. Can you write a song that's hook 1, hook 2, and hook 3? There's not even a verse, there's not a pre, there's not a chorus, it's just powerhouse hook after hook. I love those types of songs. Summary, okay, now sadly, we're going to shed a tear for a second time. We're coming to the end of the post. I made a little joke here about there is PowerPoint limits. You can only have 14 pages in PowerPoint. Of course, I'm just kidding. But let's go back to our food analogy. Imagine that great meal you just had. Remember that main course, AKA your chorus. Yes, that main course was incredible. But the appetizer was so savory and just so tasty and delicious and set up the main course. It makes your mouth water and your gut grumble for something bigger and better, that appetizer. And then that main course arrived and made it taste so much better. That's what your verses should do. So it's time to get to work and amp up them verses. And P.S., I'll have what she's having. All right, thanks for joining on this module. And let's see how the sunset is coming here in Big Sur. Pretty good. And I'll leave you with this image here, and let's write some better verses. Thanks.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. And yeah, so what did we learn? We learned that verses, they just don't exist in that space to get you to the chorus. Verses are important, so make sure that when you're writing your song, you spend just as much attention and love and care on crafting the best verse you can, just as you would with making the best and biggest chorus. So if you like that video, there's plenty more information and actually I think so much valuable content at my digital course called Insider Secrets to Hit Songwriting. And literally it's 25 years of knowledge compacted into 5 hours and 25 video modules. If you click the link below in the description field, you can check it out. And I did promise you a discount code, and that discount code is Insider20. So it's all caps, Insider20, and you can get 20% off the course, along with all the other courses I have for offer there at Teachable. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and also feel free to go to my website, benjamingroff.com, for tons more free content, insights, and hopefully some epiphanies. I'll see you there. In the meantime, have great songwriting.